Hello, welcome to my game. It is called Escape the Horde, and it's a 2D top-down shooter with basic shooting mechanics and basic health mechanics and some pickup systems as well. How to win the level is that you have to escape to a bunker without getting killed by enemies, which is quite hard depending on what route you take. As you can see here at the top left, I've already taken damage, but the health is signified by a red bar. If I just single out a single enemy, you can see if I take damage, it will go down. There are health pickups in the game, which I'll run to right now to show you that it works. If I run up here, there's a health pickup that was defended by a few enemies, and if I take it, it will replenish a small bit amount of health. There are multiple of these across the map. There are one-time use, but you can use multiple if you find them across the map. Yeah, so that's how you replenish your health. There's a big section over to the right, but just to save time in this video, I'll quickly cheat it by going up this section here and running to the bunker, which is up here. And just to show you some other features that are in game, if I click escape, you can pause it, everything freezes, the zombies can't run on you, you can't do anything. If I resume, it will simply do that. I can also go to main menu and quit if I want, but if I run into here, it will show that I've won, and just to show that the death mechanics work, I'll just quickly die. You said you've been eaten by the horde. I can either try again, which will put me back to the start with the enemies respawning, or I can just go to the menu, which will bring me back here. I'll just bring you onto the code here. This is our player attributes, which is very simple, a bit complex at the same time. We used, as seen in the game, we used the mouse cursor to aim, and there was a health system which is defined here as well, and also we used WSD to move, which can be found here as well. So these are all the variables that we need to find to store and calculate what we're looking for. So we store our movement and our mouse position in here. We find our movement and our update function here using get axis draw, horizontal and vertical for left and right, up and down. That will store them in these, and we use them to calculate our speeds down here. But right now we've got mouse position. This stores it in this vector to here, and all this does is just take this function, which calculates the position of our mouse, and stores it in the mouse position, which can then be used down here. This health function here just means that if we take if we're lower than 0 health, then we'll just move on to lowest level, which is where we can restart or whatever. Here in our fixed update, which has been used instead of update because of the physics. It's better to use fixed update for physics because it runs better, as we all know. Rigid body, mouse position. This is how we calculate our player movement using our rigid body attributes plus the movement speed, which is defined as 4, and the time of delta time. Sorry. And then this section here, quite a complicated piece of code. It uses basic vector math to calculate the angle in which the player should be looking at. So this is how we calculate the direction we should be looking at. This is how we calculate the angle using atan2. This calculates the angle in radians. Then we use the direction to calculate that, and then we change it into degrees using rad to degrees. Then we add on 6 to it, so instead of looking in the player looking as in from a value, it looks from the gun value, which makes it easier to aim. And then we set the angle we just found out in this line here to the rigid body rotation, so the player looks in that direction. Here we've got 2 functions, take damage and heal. These are called down here, so let's quickly just run down here. Enemy. So when we collide with the object that has a tag of an enemy, then it will call the take damage function. It will send 10 back to that. It's the same here with a health pack. So with the health pack tag, it will call the heal function and send 20 back to that. The take damage function is quite self-explanatory. It will just set the health minus the damage, which is 10 here because it's called here when you take damage from an enemy. And then the heal is the opposite. It will heal the player, and then both of them will set the health bar from the UI equal to the health, which we'll go into detail later. And then the final bit of code here is just a simple win game function, which is just if you collide with the bunker or tag object, then it'll just load the scene win using load scene function with the scene manager. Moving on to enemies, I won't spend too much time here. It's practically the exact same as the players, just a few different things, obviously, to make it so they're enemies. Almost identical attributes being defined here. So move speeds, movement, range of the enemies, which is a new thing. I'll go into detail. Setting our rigid body equal to the rigid body from our editor. Again, I won't go into detail here. I went into detail last time, the last script. This is how we calculate the angle which the enemy will look at, but instead of using mouse position, we use player position and transformed up position in a vector 3 direction thing, and then obviously atan2, add 2 degrees, and then set the angle to it, same as the last time. And then this is how we calculate how the distance between the two players and the zombies. So the player distance between the zombies is less than 30, then it will allow them to move. If it's more than that, then it won't allow them to move, which means that the other zombies don't just come flooding at you immediately. This is basic health function. For less than 0, it destroys the game object. This calls the movement function and a fixed update. So this calls it in here, and then it's just the same as the player. It uses vector 2 rigid bodies function to and direction move speed, which has been defined to calculate the time, the speed and the movement. Sorry. And again, the same as last time, enemy take damage, which is when they come into contact with a bullet, which is a prefab that gets fired by the gun. It will call take damage and pass in 10 as a parameter, and then it will take away 10, which is bullet damage, and then it will update health. Moving on to bullet. This is a really simple function. If a bullet comes into contact with any sort of object, doesn't matter what, it will destroy itself to stop them from building up or causing even more damage than it should. Follow camera, again, is a really simple function. The follow speed is 999. This was originally set to a quite low value, but I sped it out quite a bit because it looked a bit funky. If I find a way to do it, I didn't find a way to do it, so I immediately moved, but this works anyway. It works the exact same way. An update function which calls every frame. It will when a player moves, it will set a new position, and then this -10 here is just default value for the Z value because it's 2D. You can't have any other value, otherwise it'll mess up. And then it'll just it'll put it into this function here, and then it'll update it so the player moves every single if the player moves, then it'll move every single time along with it. Health packs, again, is a really small function. If a player collides with it, so our player, then it will destroy it. So if a zombie walks over it, it doesn't destroy it. Only a player can destroy it. This means that a zombie doesn't gain health randomly, which would be funny but not convenient. Void update. Shooting. Yeah. So the only thing here is fire point, which is a game object that's being called in, which is at the end of the gun, and also a bullet prefab, which has been spoken about before. This is a small circle you see being fired out of the gun. Bullet force, which is 20, which we use to calculate the speed of it. If we get it, this calls the input. So if I click mouse left mouse button, then it will call the shoot value, which will then call this, which will then fire out the bullet. We're using the prefab, the circle prefab, and give it a rigid body and give it a bullet force, which is 20, and it's rigid body that add force. And the main menu section is very simple, just using a start game scene manager to load the level. Same with exit game. There's a lot of these. There's different values, different scripts. So the exit game will just close the application altogether. These were created so I can assign them to buttons so players can navigate around the game easy. Same again here. Return to menu, just as simple as self-explanatory. It goes to main menu, restart, loads the level again. There's two of these because I didn't want to cause confusion. It was just the easiest way of doing it. Health bar, this is where we link the slider to the health. So set max health, which is the initiative of health, which is 100, so the player can't go over 100 health. And then the slider value equals the health. So if the health is decreased by 40, then the slider value will be decreased by 40, which means that you'll see the red slider bar, which is the top left of the screen, go down with the health. And yeah, so that just basically sets it up every single time. Quite a cool wee trick you could do. It's quite it means that it looks nice and it's also accurate. And the final one is resume game. It's quite a long one but quite simple. This is our pause screen, so obviously we just define the pause and a Boolean, so true or false. Void start, when the game starts, we set it to false, so the game isn't paused immediately when you play. Void update, if you click escape, then if the game is paused, it will call resume level. If it's not, then it will call the pause level. When it calls the pause level, it will just set the timescale to 0, and it will set the game pause to true. So if you click escape, it will then redo this, and it will say, oh wait a minute, it's true because you've already clicked it once, and it will call the resume level. And if it calls the resume level, it will set the timescale to 1, and it will set the game to false. And it will close the false menu as well, and it will open it on this as well. So the grey background and the buttons, etc. And then the buttons, these are just the simple button ones you've seen before. The action, the application.quit for exit game in the main menu, which is load scene.main menu, and that's it. For anything I would do different, I would make my game a bit more complex in my opinion. I think I could have done a lot more with the UI. I tried a point system, but it didn't work. I just couldn't get it working. I ran out of time. So yeah, I think that's what I would do, and I found it quite challenging. I haven't used Unity before, so a lot of this was quite really new to me, like the vectors, it's quite challenging, but I enjoyed it. So thanks for listening.